So the book is simply about the challenges that the researchers on the field and the healthcare professionals, the African healthcare professionals, did confront. And so the reader would get to know the complexity of the Ebola virus diseases and the challenges that these healthcare professionals did confront. And beyond that, the reader will get to know about the reason why there was a lack of trust and cynicism to a certain extent with regard to the official narrative, given the history, or I would say the unsavory history, of human clinical trials in developing countries. The book actually looks at my intention, the main objective was to kind of depict the unique experiences and perspectives of the healthcare professionals on the front line, the African healthcare professionals. The more I read about the outbreak, and the more I talked to people, the researchers of the field, the more I realized there were many questions that were unanswered. So the book merely presents a long list or a flurry of questions that remain unanswered to this day. Where did the virus come from? Where was the spillover event? Which animal is the reservoir of the virus? And when was the first infection? Which human was the first person to be infected? And how did it all begin? It's all very murky. And because the media more or less misrepresented the researchers that were on the field, because for some reason that any objective observer wouldn't know, the media decided to focus on hypothetical situations and come up with a narrative that was totally untrue about the first case, the index case, about the causes of the disease, about a fruit bat being a reservoir of the virus, when actually that's just totally false. So all of these, I did try and show that all of this is kind of false, but on the other hand, there are many conspiracy theories that have come up with some outlandish theories about the United States Army testing biological weapons, about pharmaceutical companies trying new experimental drugs on unwitting African volunteers. So I did show that all of that is false. But yeah, all of that is false, but that does not mean that the questions have been answered. The questions remain unanswered, and the main thing is what the reader would understand is the management of outbreaks in developing countries, especially in Africa, still leaves a lot to be desired, especially with regard to the communication. The book attempts to answer them because I did reach out to some researchers who did try and give me answers, but more or less what they would tell me is they do not know. And the funniest thing is the media would not say that is what the researchers are saying, that they do not know. They would come up with answers, and they would come up with narratives and come up with stories about this is the index case, this is patient 0, when all of that is actually false. So what I wanted to show was there were so many untruths, so many half-truths that were told that was for absolutely no reason at all. The truth is still out there blowing in the wind, and no one knows what happened. No one knows when the spillover event actually took place. Yeah, who was the patient 0? All of this is facilitated by the nature of healthcare in these countries that were affected. Given there's so many corrupt politicians, and they care about the Ebola money rather than what happens to the patients, what happens to the people, and which is rather very unfortunate. Yeah, so it's just like a rigmarole. Yeah, it is. Certainly, the first thing is the complexity of the disease, because you just don't know where it comes from, and it's like the first outbreak was in 1976, so that's more than 40 years ago, and we've had the best researchers in the world, and they still cannot understand where the virus comes from, which animal is the reservoir of the virus. They've actually had different theories and different hypotheses, but none of that has been proven. None of that has been confirmed. And the next thing is the media totally overlooked the experiences of the African healthcare professionals, and that was my main objective. I set out to actually write what the African healthcare professionals did experience going through the crisis, because many of them did die, and there were experimental drugs, but they never did, for some reason they didn't give them the experimental drugs, so they just let them die. And they had you've had all the sacrifices that have just gone to waste. No one really cares about the experience. So I did set out to write about their experiences, and chapter 6 actually focused on one of the main researchers in the field, the Omar Sheikh, that just more or less just died of the disease when he was the main Ebola doctor of Sierra Leone, and there were experimental drugs that could have saved him, but for some reason they didn't give him the drugs. Yeah.
Well,
and beyond that, then I would want the reader to also appreciate the sacrifices that all the missionaries all from outside of Africa have had to confront, because that also is quite important. And then the numerous questions about what human clinical trials that were conducted before the outbreak, the number of researchers that were in the area before the outbreak. It's like all these questions, why are there no answers? The book, you would find it on Archway Publishing on the website. You would also find it on Amazon.
okay.
Yeah, and you would find it on, it's also on eBay, and it's on Barnes and Nobles, and just about,
Store.
yeah. You
Okay.
just Google the name of the book, and you would find
Oh.
you would find the book.